Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 5th day of November, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying chapter 12, Devotional Service. Page 519 in the book. 519, near the top there. Abhyase api asamarto asi matkarma paramo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase pyasamartosi matkarma padamo bhava madartam apikarmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. You want to chant? Do you chant? Not yet. Okay. Anyone online? I guess not. Chad would be online, but he's sitting here, so. Okay. Abhyase, in practice, api, even if, asamartaha, unable, asi, you are, mat karma, my work, paramaha, dedicated to, bhava, become, mat artam, for my sake. Api, even, karmani, work, kurvan, performing, siddhim, perfection, avapsyasi, you will achieve. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, if you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Purport. One who is not able even to practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand, so the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness, or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. The voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Bhakta Chad, can you go and make sure as many doors as possible are closed between us and the kitchen? Right now they're all open, that's why we're hearing the pots. So, Krishna is making it very easy in order to come to him. He's in these verses, and in the next verse, he'll say the same thing. Text 8, he's giving the standard instruction. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. My dear Arjuna, winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So the first verse that we read, which is 8, describes very advanced. To fix your mind on Krishna, to always be thinking of him and engage your intelligence. That's a high perfection stage. But if it's not possible, of course, then you can follow the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga. So this is sadhana bhakti. This is what we're all trying to practice. And we have so much facility. Srila Prabhupada came, gave his books. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, translated as Nectar of Devotion, is a manual on bhakti. It is the means, what to avoid, what to do, what the goal is, and so many wonderful instructions there. And of course the other books of Srila Prabhupada. So this is the stage that we're basically at, sadhana bhakti. Now sadhana bhakti is meant to lead to bhava bhakti, a spontaneous devotion. Sadhana means you're practicing, you see. And what is the essential basis of that practice? There's a verse about that. Smartavyak satatam vishno vismartavmyonda jatuchit. Sava vidi nishedaksur etayoreva kinkana. Sava vidi means all the instructions on the books and everywhere are meant to be servants of the basic principle, smartavyak satatam Vishnu, to always remember Vishnu. And whenever Prabhupada quotes this verse, he always says first, or especially in the books, and Krishna is the original Vishnu. So in other words, it means always remembering Krishna. Sarva Vidi, all the instructions. For instance, getting up early, taking a bath, chanting Hare Krishna, coming to the temple, you see. And if you're lucky enough to be a full-time devotee, then all the things that you're supposed to do all day and that you're not supposed to do all day. These are the vidi and nisheda. Nisheda is the prohibitions. Vidi are the do's and the don'ts. And they're all meant to serve and to facilitate your progressive, deeper and deeper remembrance of Krishna, to the point where you're thinking about him at every moment. That's perfection. Not easy to attain. So that's... if you can't do that, then follow regular principles. If you can't even do that, this is today's verse, then try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Well, you'll come to the perfect stage by being able to take up the previous verse, sadhana bhakti. So, in other words, somehow connect to me, you see? Hear about me. If you can, give some donation that will help preaching, it will help the temple, whatever like that. This is appreciated by Krishna. It all has its effect. Whatever you do, remember that any small nehabhikamanashosti pratyavayo navidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasa trayate mahato bayat. This is the encouragement in the second chapter. There's no loss or diminution in this process of devotional service. If you give, just like my morning walk, I learned so much on the morning walk. So periodically I'll pick up, usually, a penny or a dime, that's a big donation, or something like that. And I thought, okay, someone has just begun their devotional service. I have a little coin in one of these pockets I'm going to drop in there. That's money that belonged to that person, and that'll connect it to him. I put that in there, and that's a connection. He doesn't even know, he or she doesn't know about it. But next birth, who knows, they'll meet a devotee, something like that. So this is how we should feel, that whatever we can do, we should do for Krishna. We should make a sacrifice. And when you do that, then Krishna sees that. And how does he respond? Well, he'll make some arrangements so that you come in touch with a devotee, and because your heart is softened because you already made a donation to give out prasadam or whatever, maybe. And so, okay, you'll take that book, that he's been trying to sell you for the last 6 months, So you get the book and say, well, I might as well read it, And then you're getting Prabhupada's association and you're moving along. The intelligence is becoming purified. So this is how it works. This is the Bhakti Yoga, and it's like, it's open for everybody. Even if you can't do this, then do at least this, do at least this. So that's what these verses are. It's very encouraging. And then he'll come back to the point of pure devotion in a few minutes, a few verses. Okay, text 11. Ataitadapya shaktosi kartam mad yogamashitaha sarva karma palatyagam tata kuryatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. So this is you're not even directly connected to Krishna, but you're giving up some connection to the fruits of your work, so you're not getting bound up tightly. Purport: it may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there is special work in which the result of one's previous action may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually, and in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice of one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 1846, we find it is stated, Yatak pravitya bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. Hare Krishna. So, here Krishna is giving is really liberal. He's not even saying you have to do it for me. Just try to, don't cultivate greed and try to keep as much for yourself and do it at the expense of others. And you know what I mean? In other words, he's saying be a kind person, be generous, give up the results of your work to some good cause, and try to be self-situated. And in this regard, I noticed in myself and in many others that I would have never had the interest at all in Krishna consciousness if I hadn't become a vegetarian. That as Prabhupada said a million times, the meat eaters can't become, because it's such a, first of all, you have to cover your consciousness so much in order to not be aware of the extraordinary pain and suffering you're causing just by biting into that drumstick or whatever you're eating. There's so much ignorance involved. And that hardens the heart to such a degree that it's very hard to become interested in something like Krishna consciousness. So I was fortunate enough. I came. I'll be honest with you. My whole anti-war activities in the '60s against the Vietnam War. I was one among many thousands of young people who saw it as just the most horrific thing. And I tried and tried and tried, but after all of that, working in the 60s, I went to Washington and had demonstrations. I lived in New York. I would go down to Washington, and 4 or 5 times you had these mass demonstrations. You read about it. And after that, 1968 rolled around, and Nixon gets elected and just keeps prosecuting the war, and it's just like it was such a depressing development. So eventually I'm living on the Lower East Side, and I got this, I must have told, many of you heard this before, I got a serious hepatitis. And I was in hospital for a month. I had to go back, live with my parents, and they, he said, well, he's go sick. He was in the hospital for a month. And that was, a long time. I didn't have many visitors. One thing that did enliven me was the so-called, I happened to be there when the walk on the moon, the first landing on the moon. You may have seen the movies of it, He blew it. I mean, he needed editing. It says one step for a man, one step for man, and a big step for mankind. No, it's a small step for a man, namely myself, and a huge step for mankind. I noticed that when he came back. Always the corrector. But that was like a far out thing, because I certainly believed it was happening, so that was enlivening. But the whole thing was so depressing. I honestly was ideating suicide at that time, at certain points. I mean, I was pretty aware of it. I wasn't going to do it, but I was just, I was imagining it. So that's how low I got. And then when I came out, my body, I was still feeling some of the effects of the disease, and I was weak, and I said, I need some way of getting my health back, And by that time, yoga had become a little popular, and I was attracted to India through the music, Ravi Shankar, and the drummer, Ala Raka. Did you ever know that? So, because I was into the drum, wow, it was amazing drum. So anyway, I was open to that, and I went to the Yellow Pages. There was nothing in Hempstead, that's for sure, in my little community out in the island. And I found Amala Bhakta's, it wasn't called Amala Bhakta then, but he had a yoga ashram in New York. I would drive in there. And that, and he wasn't, I learned later from his article, this article of how I came, as told to Dravida Dasa in the BTG, I can give it to you, that he had some exposure to bhakti. And he was integrating a few little things into his, because it wasn't just all hatha yoga. We had little classes, and we learned a mantra. My first mantra about Krishna. I don't even know if I knew what it meant at that time, but you'll recognize it as soon as I say it. Apavitro pavitro va savavastam gatopriya yaksmade pundarikaksham sabhaya abhyantara shuchahi. Right? It's about when you get initiated that you say this, because it means whether impure or pure, or you've been through so many circumstances, if you remember the lotus-eyed Lord, then you become pure, internally and externally, right? So anyone who gets initiated, that's part of the initiation ceremony. Anyway, somehow or other, I don't know if he instructed this, but I was chanting that mantra on the way in. I was on the subway and this and that. I was chanting that. So Krishna was seeing, maybe there's some hope for this guy, So, and it all started, from my purification diet, which included not just vegetarianism, but raw foods, a lot of juices, and all this stuff. I was perpetually hungry. Sometimes I would freak out, and I would go to the grocery or the supermarket and get a big loaf of bread, and eat it. Anyway, so that I was open to it. I became interested, and I was always philosophical, so that helped me. I bought a book, like that. So anyway, this is what Krishna is talking about here. That even if you're unable to work in this conscience of me, then try to act with giving up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. So at least try to be a generous person, you see. And this brings to mind, that what can happen is that, okay, you meet a devotee, and in those days we had various campaigns feeding the poor in, where was it? Some foreign country, I forget where it was. And we would collect money on that basis, with people. So anyway, Krishna is giving everyone a chance now to get within, the realm of devotional service and gradually be drawn there. So then it says, even, and now the next one is, even if you can't do that, we're on page 521, Prabhu. You got it? Okay. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasad jnana dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma palatyagas tyagat shantiranantaram. Okay, if you cannot take to this practice, which is just giving up the results of your work, if you can't do that, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. Purport. As mentioned in the previous verses, there are two kinds of devotional service: the way of regulative principles and the way of full attachment in love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those who are actually not able to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, it is better to cultivate knowledge, because by knowledge one can be able to understand his real position. Gradually, knowledge will develop to the point of meditation. By meditation, one can be able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by a gradual process. In the cultivation of knowledge, there are processes which make one understand that one himself is the Supreme, and that sort of meditation is preferred if one is unable to engage in devotional service. If one is not able to meditate in such a way, then there are prescribed duties, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, for the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, which we shall find in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But in all cases, one should give up the result of fruits of labor. This means to employ the result of karma for some good cause. In summary, to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal, there are two processes. One process is by gradual development, and the other process is direct. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and the other method involves renouncing the fruits of one's activities. Then one can come to the stage of knowledge, then to the stage of meditation, then to the stage of understanding the Supersoul, and then to the stage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may take either the step-by-step process or the direct path. The direct process is not possible for everyone, therefore the indirect process is also good. It is, however, to be understood that the indirect process is not recommended for Arjuna, because he is already at the stage of loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It is for others who are not at this stage. For them, the gradual process of renunciation, knowledge, meditation, and realization of the Supersoul and Brahman should be followed. But as far as the Bhagavad Gita is concerned, it is the direct method that is stressed. Everyone is advised to take to the direct method and surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And I will say, as Srila Prabhupada says in so many other places, that in this age, Lord Chaitanya has given us this Sankirtan movement. And it's like, you may not know anything. You may not even believe in God, So don't worry about it. Just join the Kirtan. And after you chant for a while, take prasadam and just hang out, with the devotees. And that's more or less how the movement grew. A lot of people who didn't know anything about anything. And in some ways, Prabhupada said this was an advantage. He tried for years to preach in India to start it, And he had a little false start in Jhansi. He thought things were going to go. He had a building, but it really wasn't his building. And then he had his first disciple, Acharya Prabhakar, who he got some good Sanskrit instruction from. But he didn't really catch on. He had to leave the building because the governor's wife wanted to use it for the ladies' auxiliary, whatever. So now what? Then he eventually, he started, he took sannyas, then he went to Vrindavan, and he started doing Back to Godhead magazine. A friend mentioned to him, these magazines are great. You've seen them, they're just like newsprint, not like today, full color magazine. And he said, these magazines are nice, but they're easily thrown away. You should make some books. They're permanent, more permanent. Prabhupada took it to heart, and he started doing the Bhagavatam. The first canto took him 4 years to raise the money and all the proofs and everything. And when he had that, then he finally was inspired, well, I better try to really fulfill that desire of my spiritual master, to go abroad and preach in English, So that was the impetus. The last 12 years he did that. So Lord Chaitanya, he knew the character of the souls in this Kali Yuga. That they're not going to be so interested in meditation or jnana or so many things here. So he does a shortcut, and the chanting itself brings you directly in touch with Krishna, and the purification process is so powerful, and you get caught up, and you find that your best friends are there in the temple. Those who are really willing to talk to you and like that and whatever. And so you become attached. You become attached to Krishna and detached from Maya, just by that process, even without so much knowledge. But the knowledge is important because you always remember this verse, that the intelligence has to become purified. That's the key. So that the intelligence purified means you have more and more faith. You may not have so much realization right away, but you have faith in the process. And you can have the determination to take it up seriously. That's why I always quote this verse, Kama dinam katina katita palita nideshas, tesham jata mayana kadunana tapano pashantihi, utsri jaitan adiyotapate sampratam labna buddhis, pamayatak shadanamabhayam mam niyung svatmadase. This is near the beginning of Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami, in the section of his instructions having to do with Abhideya. Abhideya means the practice of devotional service. There's Sambandha, Abhideya, and then Prayojana. Sambandha is understanding who I am, what this God is, what this world is, and what relationships are. Sambandha means the relation. And then that should lead to your wanting to practice, chanting and so forth, And then the Prayojana is the final goal, which is pure love for God. So here he's explaining at the beginning how one can really become determined to practice devotional service. So he says, in how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting those hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So the purification of the intelligence through study, through hearing, association, gives you, what's that famous verse? Satam prasangan mama virya sambido. This is spoken by Lord Kapila to his mother near the beginning of his teachings in the end of the third canto. 3:25-20 is the first verse. So after a few verses, the basic teaching is that the strong attachments that we have to this world have to be turned toward the sadhus. You see, that's the key. That's why we sing every morning, Shri Guru Charana Rati Ese Utamagati. That attachment to the lotus feet of the spiritual master is the goal, or the best means to the goal. Because that attachment means you'll be very open to hearing from such a soul and serving, and so that Krishna really likes that and gives you more and more inspiration and more realization. So, what is this verse? Now, there's 8 verses. Sadhu Sangastaka. It's all about the importance of associating with sadhus. First, he defines the sadhu, and of course, now with that movie out, we can just think of Prahlad as the ideal sadhu. Tatikshava. Who could be more tolerant than Prahlad? Tatikshava. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Every time I chant that now, I'm going to be thinking of it. So, Tatikshava Karunika. Tolerant and merciful. And merciful means you're going to try to give others Krishna, because that's the greatest mercy, but you have to be tolerant. Prabhupada always gives a favorite example, Jesus Christ. So Tikshava Suridak Sarvadehinam, the well-wishing friend of every living entity. Prabhupada points out when he speaks of it, it's not just human beings. Don't forget the cows, and everyone else. They try to avoid, stepping on the bugs and everything else. Suridak Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatravak. Having no enmity toward anyone. This idea that your enemy hasn't been born. You have no enmity. They may have enmity to you, but you don't reciprocate in kind. You're tolerant. Ajata Shatravak. And because all of these qualities, Shanta, you're peaceful. You can't, those who are trying to satisfy the senses, accumulated, well, you can never be peaceful. No matter what state you find yourself, oh, I got it made, I got the good job, I got the big bank account, I have the house and everything. Yeah, but it can be taken. The danger may be there. And then there's so many dangers, disease, anxiety, fear. But if you really be peaceful, you have no material investment. You're not trying to go down that material path. You're going down the spiritual path. So then he finishes up with this. Satam mamavi bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. So what are you going to hear in that association? So then in the next four verses in, he says, here's what happens if you associate with the sadhus. Satam is the plural of sadhus. Satam prasangan, very important. Not just sangha, but prasanga. Means meaningful, intense service. You're not just coming and, staying a few minutes and then leaving because they had to leave, okay. But the point is, you really want to hear. You really want to get the benefit. That's prasangam. Tata prasangan mama virya samvido. You're going to hear conversations, vibrations about, Kapila say as Krishna, he's speaking, and my glories, my powerful glories. You'll hear glorification of me. Bhavanti, which is Bhavanti Rit Karna Rasayana. It is a life-giving elixir for the heart and the ears. It's very pleasing to the ears and purifying the heart. Rit Karna Rasayana Kata talks about it. So in that, then Tajoshanad Ashu, applying this process, gathering with the devotees and hearing. That's basically it. Ashu Apavarga Vartmani, this is the path of Apavarga. Anyway, I might as well go over that again. You probably all heard it before. Apavarga. Apavarga is the path of liberation. Why? Pa-varga. The pa-vargas are the pa letters, the letters that begin with P, right? Pa, pa, ba, ba, and ma, right? Yeah, and each one stands for another, bondage in the world. Pa means parishrama, working very hard, for the battle for existence. What is it called? Pa-varga, and then ph, pa, painila, working so hard that foam is coming from your mouth. Prabhupada said, we see it with the horses. And then B can mean two things. Of course, bandha, you become more and more bound, bondage. But because it says bhyartata, also means frustration. And then, of course, the big one, BH, bhaya, right? Fear, anxiety. You're getting older, whatever. You can't do what you used to do. And then M. You can guess what M stands for. Virtue, which means death. Yeah. So this is pavarga. So this is the path of apavarga. In other words, liberation from all these things. Liberation from the material body. So this is apavarga vartmani. And along that path, you're following from association, hearing, and kirtan is the best satsanga, pasanga. Is you develop these shraddha, ratir, bhaktu, anukramishati. Step by step, your faith deepens. Faith is the foundation of it all. Adar shraddha, tatak sadhu sangha. You see? So from sadhu sangha, you get more faith, and then you want to continue your sadhu sangha. So, shraddha, rati means attraction for Krishna, and bhakti means ultimately love. Real affection for Krishna. Anukramishati, step by step. So that's the whole, that's the mission statement of the Krishna's Consciousness Society. That's why Prabhupada started it. And anywhere you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's all, one meeting after another. Of course, so many kirtans, but there's also Lord Chaitanya with the Prakashananda, and even as a boy, with all his friends around, he defeated the Kaviraj, right? Kashmiri. From Kashmir, they would go around, especially in Navadvip. It was a place of learning, and they would debate with anyone, And then when they beat them, they want a certificate, so they end up, with all these certificates. They would recognition. So Krishna, the Lord Chaitanya was just a boy. He was like 15 or something, and he had his friends around him. And this Keshava Kashmiri, he came by. He heard about how Nimai Pandit. He's a Pandit. He'll give you a good thing. So yeah. Somebody saw he's just a boy, but he's still. Lord said, "Don't worry, I know Sanskrit pretty good." And so he started. He composed so many verses, right, all about the Ganges. Anyway, so Lord Chaitanya memorized them all as he said it, which is pretty amazing. We have trouble memorizing one little Bhagavad Gita verse, but these are longer. After he had shown his prowess and was waiting for the reply from this young whippersnapper, Lord Chaitanya said, "Well, those verses are very nice, but there's one I memorized, and I'd like to explain the good qualities and the mistakes in it." Mistakes? What kind of mistakes? No mistake. So then he analyzed it. There was one, Bhavani Bhartar. Did you remember you said? Bhavani Bhartar, it's redundant, because Bhavani is automatically the name of Shiva's wife. It's one of the names of Durga. So to say the husband of her, who was the wife of Shiva, is redundant. You don't need the Bhartar. As soon as you say Bhavani, then you understand that this is the wife of Shiva. Anyway, there were other defects in the thing. He memorized that particular verse and others, so this was like, So anyway, he defeated that Keshava Kashmiri like that. It's a very wonderful thing. So anyway, this is the process. Better than meditation and renunciation of the fruits of action by renunciation, one contain peace of mind. So now he's going to go on, and the rest of the chapter is going to describe the process of devotional service in more detail. That's what it's all about. There's only 20 verses. Advaishta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara samadukka sukhakshami santushtak satatam yogi yatatma dridhanishchayaha mayarpatamano buddhi yomad bhakta same priyaha. So now for the next few verses he's describing the pure devotee. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination. His mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. And all of the verses end with this, who is very dear to Krishna, which is the final goal of our process. Purport. Coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these two verses. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone. Nor does the devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds, so it is better to suffer than to protest. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, it is stated, Tatte nukambam susamikshimano punjana eva nukritam vipakam. Whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Close quote. Therefore, he is always calm, quiet, and patient, despite many distressful conditions. A devotee is also always kind to everyone, even to his enemy. Nirmama means that the devotee does not attach much importance to the pains and trouble pertaining to the body, because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. He does not identify with the body. Therefore, he is freed from the conception of the false ego and is equipoised in happiness and distress. He is tolerant, and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty. Therefore, he is always joyful. He is a completely perfect mystic because he is fixed in the instructions received from the spiritual master. And because his senses are controlled, he is determined. He is not swayed by false arguments because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. All these qualifications enable him to fix his mind and intelligence entirely on the Supreme Lord. Such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but the devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. Furthermore, the Lord says that such a devotee is very dear to him, for the Lord is always pleased with all his activities in full Krishna consciousness. So, he's describing in the next few verses the state of perfection that he's been leading up to. And you can see that this is quite a standard to come to, and this is what Srila Prabhupada gave us. This is the thing about Krishna consciousness, that all the steps, to perfection are given. We may not be able to follow them all right now, but the process is such that if you just get on the path, follow the path, then the perfection will be there. So it's very encouraging. It's like from the beginning. It's what do we learn in the beginning of the 9th chapter, right? Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavatram Vidamuttamam Pratyakshavangamam Dharmyam Susakam Kartam Abhyam. It's joyfully performed. It's Susakam Kartam Abhyam. It's like, okay, there are some austerities here, but it's not like, I'm reading about this, going out into the forest and just living on roots and fruits, alone, all right? That sounds impossible, and it is for us, But Prabhupada gave us a process that was possible, and by introducing us to the mantra and the chanting, and if you just pay us attention, you get absorbed in the chanting, then Krishna is purifying you. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. That's the first line, the first words of the first line of the first verse of the Shikshastika. So that purification is the whole business, because we already have all this. We already have love of Godhead. It's just buried in there, right? Another teaching to Sanatana Goswami: Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shavanadi Shuddha Chitte Kadayayudoi. There's the whole program. The eternal perfection of love of Godhead is already within us. It's not a sadhya. Sadhya in this context means something to be attained, that you don't have yet. Sadhya, Nityasiddhikare sadhya kabu noi is not. Then how do we attain it? Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. By hearing, etc., hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, all the 9 parts of devotional service. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. The consciousness becomes purified and gradually reveals what's already there, that's been there all along, but it's been covered and distorted into sense gratification. Shavanadi Shuddha Chitte Kordaye Udoy. It awakens. It automatically awakens, that love of Godhead. So that's very encouraging. The object to which we're striving is already within us. We just have to find it. We just have to manifest it. Not something artificial to be brought about. Hare Krishna. Okay, should we go on? All right, one more. Yasman no judate loko, lokan no... I'm sorry. Yasman no judate loko, lokan no judate chayaha, harshama shabayod vegar, mukto yasachame priyaha. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. Purport. A few of a devotee's qualifications are further being described. No one is put into difficulty, anxiety, fearfulness, or dissatisfaction by such a devotee. Such a devotee is kind to everyone. He does not act in such a way as to put others into anxiety. At the same time, if others try to put a devotee into anxiety, he is not disturbed. It is by the grace of the Lord that he is so practiced that he is not disturbed by any outward disturbance. Actually, because the devotee is always engrossed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, such material circumstances cannot move him. Generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear, and when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. A devotee who is always transcendental to these disturbances is very dear to Krishna. So just, what we saw with Srila Prabhupada, and we can experience some ourselves, that if you're Krishna conscious, if you're actually hearing the holy name and you're absorbed, then automatically you feel a certain joy. And the more that you focus on that and purify, the more that intense joy can always be there. So you can, always be happy. You can't always be happy on the material plane, obviously. That's our main verse here. Yehi sangsparjita bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantabanta kotaya nadeshu ramate buddha. Intelligent persons do not take part in the pleasures that are due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of all misery, and they have a beginning and an end, and so the wise do not delight in them. So contrast that with the pleasures of Krishna consciousness. Why does it have to have an end? It only has an end because your mind goes somewhere else and you end it. But if you can keep your mind on Krishna and keep chanting that holy name, then you can always be enjoying. You can't say that about any kind of material pleasure. Material pleasure always has a beginning and an end, and oftentimes it's very expensive, and you have to work again to get it again. So that's why it's a sat. So that's what does it say? Tamasi ma jyotirgama, asato ma sadgamaya. Is in the third one too? What is it? But isn't there one more? Amitam ma, mityu ma amitam gama. Yeah. So take me from. So there's two ways of saying. Prabhupada would always take it as an imperative, that the ma means not. Don't stay in darkness. Come to the light. But another way of seeing it, maybe the grammar, ma can be me, and gama is a prayer to the Lord. Please take me from darkness to light. Take me from death to immortality. Take me from, what was the other one? From the darkness to the light? Oh, from asato. Temporary to the eternal. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we get the idea. So, and even in early stages of Krishna consciousness, if you have you get absorbed. There's a big festival. It's Janmashtami, or it's a Ratha Yatra. Then all day you can feel, excited. The kirtan is there, the wonderful prasadam, the service, the opportunities for service. There's it's not like, all right, I saw that for a while now. Let me do something else. There's always something else to do in Krishna consciousness, and you can be, you can spend an hour, 2 hours in kirtan, and you'll be perfectly happy. You can't spend 2 hours listening to some karmi music, and it's just not going to be the same. So that's what Krishna is giving us here. And did we do 15? Is that the one we just did? Yeah. We did 15. Yeah. So he doesn't put anyone into difficulty, and just the opposite. He tries to let them join the party. It's not an exclusive club. You can come to the temple, If you can take these beads, you can chant on your own. We're just trying to give out the nectar. Fear and anxiety, happiness and distress, fear and anxiety is very dear to me. Anapeksha Shuchi Daksha. Oh, wait a minute. We have. Let me give you a few. Huh? The next one. 16 is where we're at, right? 18? No, we're not. Yeah, it's 8:10. Yeah, so we'll have All right, so we begin with 16 on Monday? Yeah. Okay. All right, so 1 or 2 poems. I already did one, Kamadina. So here's a few verses from one of my favorites, the first Kunja Biharashtaka. Inna nila mani manjula varna, pullani pakusamanchitakarna, Krishna labhada kushora sihari, sundaro jayati kunja bihari. His smooth complexion conquers sapphires, stunning to the eye. Kadamba blooms with fragrance full on each ear gently lie. His beauty's greatened by his chest where Gunja necklace stays. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Radhika Vadana Chanda Chakora Sava Ballava Vaduti Chora Chachari Chatudatan Chatachari Chadato Chayati Kunja Bihari. Chakora longing for the moon of Radha's radiant face, a thief purloining patience from the coward's wives apace. His expert rhythmic dancing winning all the gopis' praise. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. And the next one is Govardhan Leela. Sarvatak Patila Kaulaka Pava Dwangsanena Ritabasa Garva Goshta Rakshana Kategididhari Leelaya Jayati Kunjabihari. When Indra's sacrifice he stopped, he stole the Deva's pride by playfully uplifting Giri Govardhan to hide his friends and cows beneath the hill for 7 nights and days. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Okay, one more. And it says, Sarvatag, no, we did that. Ragamandala Vibhushita Bangshi Vibhamena Madanosa Vashangsi Stuyamana Chaditak Shukashari Shrena Birjayati Kundi Bihari. Heartwarming warbling melodies adorn his flute which sings of Cupid fest, to him unending happiness it brings. The parrot pairs his loving pastimes, never tired to praise. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.